Welcome to PHRC Raising the Standard, our very own television show for Paducah Human Rights Commission right here in the award-winning Paducah, Kentucky. I'd like to shout out to our Chairman Gary Reese and the rest of the board, and Ms. McCabe, who's our office manager. We are so grateful to be able to provide this for you. Our special guest today is Ms. Mary Ann Taylor from the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights, and she's going to be with us for 3 different segments of PHRC Raising the Standard. The first one is going to be on ADA. The second is going to be on age, and particularly for the Paducah Human Rights Commission, which ranges between the ages of 40 and 70. And then lastly, housing, fair housing. It's the law. So welcome and thank you. We hope that our education is going to mean something to you and that you'll have some takeaways and some walkaways so that you'll be able to enhance the lives of family members and fellow citizens. Welcome, Ms. Mary Ann Taylor.
Well, thank you. It's good to be back in your city again.
Yes.
Yeah.
So happy that you're here. And
yes.
We know that you and all the folks back at Kentucky Commission on Human Rights in Louisville, Kentucky are very, very busy about taking care of business.
We are. We're about the business of business.
Yes.
Yes.
So thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we
Thank you.
really, really appreciate it. Well, first of all, how about telling the viewing audience a little bit about you and some of your background, maybe prior to and certainly with the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights?
Well, my role at the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights is I'm the Director of Education Outreach and now Intake, which means I have the pleasure of traveling across this state, doing shows such as this, doing workshops, doing conciliation trainings, sometimes just sitting at a booth passing out information. That's all part of the education and outreach. On the other hand, I also sit in the office and take all the phone calls, especially if they're a housing call and we can tell a person if they potentially have a case of discrimination or not. That's called intake, and so now I supervise that department. I've been with the commission for 10 years. I've been with state government for 20 years, so we're in the countdown phase. My background, of course, is social work and then management and leadership. I am a UK alum. I'm proud of that. That's kind of hard, living in the city of Louisville. A little bit about the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights. Although we are located in Louisville, we are still a state agency, and as such, we serve all 120 counties.
120 counties.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow. And then with all the hats you were wearing, now you're wearing an additional hat.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody could do it, Mary Ann Taylor could do it.
I do my best, and it's
it.
Enjoyable work. It's the kind of work when you go home, you feel like you've made a difference that day. You can always point back to one thing and think, okay, this may have helped someone. So it's worth it.
Well, first of all, I'm glad to know you.
Yeah.
And for you to be one of my mentors and this big old mentor with your little self. ADA. Tell the ladies and gentlemen what that acronym stands for.
Okay. ADA is the Americans with Disabilities Act. It is part of the civil rights law, and it's part of the Kentucky Civil Rights Act, which we enforce. A lot of people don't realize that the Commission on Human Rights is actually a law enforcement agency because we do have powers to enforce any decisions that we make pertaining to a case. And with the Americans with Disabilities Act, that it crosses over all bases. It crosses over our housing bases, it crosses over our employment bases, and it crosses over public accommodations. So someone could come to us and feel that they have been discriminated against on the job, in their housing situation, in the grocery store, and we would have jurisdiction. If we too felt that it met all the criteria, we would have jurisdiction to file that complaint on that person's behalf. We are not their advocate at that point.
Yes.
Once we prove or once we feel that we have enough information to move forward, then our legal department becomes an advocate for our decision. And so the ADA falls into that. So as we talk more, I would like to expound a little bit on
Yes.
what that looks like in each of those basics.
Yes. One of the advantages of having good working relationships with the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights is because the local commission has some limitations.
Correct.
For example, with Paducah Human Rights Commission, our jurisdiction falls under age and ADA and sexual orientation and housing and all those things. But our limitations are that if we have claims filed that go beyond our scope, then we have the opportunity to refer them to your office,
Yes.
and then you can take up where we leave off and then utilize us as you feel like is necessary, especially when it comes to the claim that was originally filed in our office, any initial investigations that we've done, interviews that we've done, and all of those things. And so the local commission is there to do those local things. But when we go outside of our scope, outside of our area of jurisdiction, then we have you to come to, and that is very comforting.
And it's very valuable to us. As you know, with 120 counties and one department of 4, we can't be everywhere that we need to be. And we've utilized the local commission. You know, I've asked you to
Yes.
go get things for me from the county clerk's office
Yes.
that we aren't able to get, you know, either by email or by phone, but we have eyes and ears on the ground.
Yes.
And sometimes you guys can alert us to things that are quote unquote non-jurisdictional.
Yes.
In other words, it was a bad thing that happened, but it was not necessarily an illegal thing that happened.
Exactly.
And we need to still put our foot on it and say, you know what, this is a bad thing and it needs to stop. So you guys may not have, at the local level, jurisdiction to do that. We have the jurisdiction to say, you know what you've done is not necessarily illegal, but guess what, we're going to tell the world that you did it.
Yes.
And by doing so, you know, that gives us a little more leverage. So it's awesome to have you all as eyes and ears on the ground for us, because an individual may be afraid, literally afraid, to file a complaint. But you could come to me and say, well, company XYZ down the street continues to do this to folks who are disabled. Okay, so I can then gather enough information from you, present it to my commissioners, and we can file a commissioner-initiated complaint and, you know, save the integrity and of that person that's afraid they're going to be retaliated against,
Yes.
that person that's afraid they're going to lose their job or lose their home or not be able to be invited back to their physician's office. We can take that stress out of the picture and do it for you.
Yes. Sometimes, as I have shared with the board for many years, particularly since the early 2000s, is that on the surface, some claims may not appear to have teeth. And so beginning with January 2012, when Mayor Paxton appointed me interim, and then the rest is history, one point of a multiple point vision was that we will no longer dismiss things just based on what appears to be obvious face value or lack thereof. And so what we began to do beginning January 2012 is that we look into it anyhow. Because what I've found over the years, since first being involved with Paducah Human Rights Commission, and thank God for all those who've gone on and those who are still around, but not necessarily actively serving with us, I thank God for all of them, is that often the claimant or the potential claimant is hurt and angry, upset, wounded, feeling helpless and hopeless, and can't get their thoughts together enough to put it on paper, or can't get their thoughts together enough to give us a timeline and to, you know, explain all those details and the nuances of all those things that occurred over whatever period of time. And so what we have found since then is that there are times when there are teeth, and we've investigated and uncovered some things. There have been some times when it didn't turn out the way that the claimant wanted, but a point was made. Some changes were made. And sometimes that is the most important thing, is that some changes are made. Employers, landlords, others see the errors of their ways and have decided not to be indifferent and lacking in empathy anymore and starting to do better and to treat people better. And so there are some direct and indirect advantages to people stepping up and coming. If for nothing else, come and see if you have anything that could go in a claim. And then if not in our local office, then we have the opportunity to refer you to the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, some other office in Kentucky. And so some people don't even know about all those things. And there are so many advantages to at least inquiring.
That is correct. I think something that you hit on that I find we have to do is spend a lot of time de-escalating. If we can get the person de-escalated to the point that we can ask the right questions, those claims that initially seem not to have teeth, they really do. And it may not be for the reason they came to you.
Right.
And that does, as you said, give us a chance to send a real clear message that what is going on here is not only rude, it's illegal.
Yes.
It will be addressed. You'll be exposed. And that is valuable to us. We were talking about ADA.
Yes.
ADA is probably the fastest rising complaint that we have. We used to be known literally across the state as those are the race people. You know, if there's a discrimination based on race, you call the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights. And over the last 10 years, my logo is if you live long enough, you will be a member of a protected class no matter what. First of all, you've got to get to 40.
Yes.
If you can get to 40 years old, you're a member of a protected class. And with people living longer, as we are now, that means we're working longer, and that means we're working with disabilities. So we are seeing such a rise in the number of disability calls and complaints that are legitimate, that are coming in. And you know, sometimes it's subtle. There might be a position for a receptionist, but that company doesn't want the look of that receptionist to be in a wheelchair. So it's subtle. So that person in the wheelchair who applied to be the receptionist doesn't get the job, may not even get the interview. And they'll call us, and as we de-escalate, like I said before, we will come to find out that, you know, the reason they don't want you in that position is because they have a look for their company or their agency, and your disability doesn't allow them to, you know, keep that brand. That's a legitimate case, and we're willing to take it. And that's also for our next segment on age. That happens a lot. As part of education and outreach and the training that we do, if we're training employers, we also have to remind people constantly that all disabilities are not visible.
Right.
You don't know if I have lupus. I don't know if you have lupus. You don't know if I have cancer. I don't know if you have cancer. That doesn't mean that we don't have the disability.
Right.
I may have a slipped disc, but I'm walking well today. So I'm not on a walker and I don't have a cane. That doesn't mean that I shouldn't have that sticker in my car. But it also doesn't mean that you should deny me employment or that you should deny me housing. Housing is another area where we're just inundated with calls every day. I need a ramp. My son has some mental health issues, and because of those mental health issues, we can't paint his walls a particular color. They have to be soothing. May we paint the walls? Can we make that change to an apartment or to a home that we're renting? Service animals, you know. There is one recognized service animal through the ADA and Department of Justice. That is a seeing eye dog. In the state of Kentucky, we also recognize miniature horses. It's Kentucky. But Housing and Urban Development, they recognize a miniature horse as well. Those are your two service animals. But now you have ESAs, also known as emotional support animals.
Yes.
We're seeing emotional support animals on college campuses. We're seeing them in apartments. We're seeing them in homes. So you've got someone who already has 2 pets. They've paid their pet deposits. Now there's a disability, and because of that disability, they need an emotional support animal. The 2 pets are not the emotional support animal. They want to bring a 3rd animal into the home. The rub with landlords is that emotional support animal can be any animal.
Oh, my.
It can be a snake. It can be a rabbit.
My.
It can be a gerbil. It can be a cat. It can be a dog. It can be I've had a case where it was a hog.
And you did say snake.
I said snake.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
All of the above, if it can perform that service as an emotional support animal, then it can be recognized by Housing and Urban Development, by the Department of Justice as such. So that's thrown the whole world into a tizzy about what is not an emotional support animal, what's legitimate, what's not legitimate. But all that still falls under the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Yes.
Moving away from animals, things people don't often realize is parking spaces. I live in this apartment. I have a disability. It may not readily be visible to you. My apartment is 3 blocks, and parking is come as you are. First come, first serve. So I have the right as a disabled person to ask for that accommodation. Can you reserve me a spot? Can you put a sticker in front of my parking place? Can you put my parking place in front of my door? So we're seeing a lot of those kinds of things at the commission. And then public accommodations. Are there cutouts in the sidewalks? Does a wheelchair have to go over a lip? Does it have to go over a curb just across the street? Do your cross signals, do they beep? I lived in a neighborhood where the Kentucky School for the Blind was housed. So we got used to bells and whistles all the time. But every crosswalk had a sign that talked. Walk now, red light, stop now. And we got used to that. But there are still many cities, especially small rural towns,
Yes.
that don't have the funding and don't have the knowledge to do that. So ADA is a big deal, especially now that we're living longer, that we're working longer, that we have more things to do. Things that you may not even think about. You may go to Walmart and not realize that there is a particular line where the aisles are wider, where the checkout aisles are wider, and they're not wider just for your convenience. They're wider because ADA says they have to be. Or if you go into new apartments now, you should never find light switches that are over 4 foot high. There's got to be at least one apartment where the light switch is on a level that a person in a wheelchair can get to. So,
to people who don't have disabilities, at least what they don't identify as disabilities. I'm a firm believer that everybody has 1 or 2 disabilities, but they just don't admit them or don't acknowledge them. But what are some of the unpleasant reports or complaints that you've had, particularly in smaller towns that don't have the funding, or maybe in some areas that say they don't have funding because they just really don't want to budget it? What are some of those situations that you find with the parking and some of the other accommodations?
Unfortunately, there have been times when someone has waited on maybe one of the only 3 handicap accessible apartments, and they passed away while waiting, and they never got the apartment because the waiting list was just that long.
Yes.
There have been those kinds of cases, and that's just heartbreaking. Through no fault of the landlords, the town is small apartment, maybe only 1 or 2 apartment complexes, and maybe only 1 or 2 units in each complex. So And then you've had people who've had accidents going up and down stairs. You know, they've made the request, I need to be on level 1. They have to wait until level 1 becomes available, and then there's an accident because they're still maneuvering stairs. There in one of our larger cities, there's an issue with sometimes the elevators don't work.
Wow.
That can be a big issue if you're on the 3rd floor and you have a walker or you have some mobility issues. You've got to get to your place of residence. Another thing that people don't think about often too is, what if the person who is disabled is the visitor? You're coming to see me, but you have mobility issues and I live on the 10th floor. Wow. That could be an issue.
Yes.
And you're a significant person that comes to visit me a lot. It's necessary for you to be there. So we've had some bad incidents like that. I can think of one particular case of a person in a town, and you know, the personal side of me, the off the record side of me says, you need to move to another town. Has had such a difficult time finding a place of residence that will take his service animal, which is a breed that is on a list of breeds of vicious animals.
Wow.
The animal's not vicious at all. The animal is awesome. It is trained to, you know, do some things that you wouldn't think animals can do, like to feel for your pulse, if your heart should stop, to be able to compress, to lick your hands to wake you up if you're having a nightmare and could possibly hurt yourself or the person laying next to you. That's an awesome animal. But because of that animal's breed, you've got some folks that said, that's a vicious animal. They can't live in my apartment complex. We're afraid. So those are some things. And then we've had some things that, some bad cases that are just born out of ignorance. We don't want this person living here because we heard they have AIDS and we don't want anybody else to catch it.
Right.
Okay, so that's just ignorance and not understanding what that disability is, that you don't catch it because the person lives 3 buildings down from you and they drove through the parking lot. So those are some of that's our worst case scenarios. Yes. I'm giving you the worst case scenarios because you asked.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. What are some of the basic procedures that people who have been diagnosed with disabilities, what are some of the basic procedures they need to follow when they feel that accommodations are not being reasonably made, or if they just want to inquire as to what those accommodations ought to be?
First things first, and this is something you would think a lot of people know, but they don't. Get it in writing. Make your request in writing. Even if you feel like your penmanship is chicken scratch and your grammar is horrible and spelling just never occurred to you, that doesn't matter. Put it on an envelope if you have to, and get a request in writing and ask for a response in writing. I need a 1st floor apartment. I need a closer parking space. I need for my desk, because of my anxiety issues, I need for my desk to be at the end of the row, you know, of cubicles, so that I don't have to hear a lot of white noise or outside noise, so that I can concentrate, do my job. Put that in writing. Ask for the response. If you're in a business, go to your HR person. If your HR person is the problem, then call us. Call your local commission. Your local commission will either help you or they'll call us to help you.
Yes.
It's really not that difficult. And what a lot of people don't realize is there is no formula. If I'm in an apartment complex and I need an accommodation, I can tell the maintenance man that I need an accommodation. It is in his responsibility to get that information to the right person. And then no one should come back to me with a stack of papers for me to fill out to request that. I've made the request, you know, and there are no magic words. The average citizen doesn't know to say, I need an accommodation for my disability. And they shouldn't have to. But they do know to say, you know what, I can't live here. This is just too hard on me. My back is in too bad a shape. My asthma is too bad to be next to this huge tree. Can you move me somewhere else? That's all that needs to be said. And that will constitute asking for an accommodation. Then it's on the landlord, the employer, or whatever to make the change.
Landlords and employers, they already know what's right and what isn't.
We like to hope that they do.
Yes.
But in case they don't, we're always willing to tell them. That's part of our training in the education and outreach is we go to a lot of employers. We do a lot of fair housing training, you know, even with public accommodations. And I always say the first time I come is free. It doesn't cost you anything to have us come out and do the training. If you're too far away and I can't get there, I'll Skype you. You know, there's all kinds of social medias that we can get the message to you. I can email you information. The second time I come, it's usually because you didn't listen the first time. Okay, so the second time that I'm out there, you're gonna have to pay.
Yes.
Because that means there's been charges filed and evidently we've substantiated that, and now it's what's called a conciliation training. You're conciliating it. You want us to go away. But guess what? If we find probable cause that yes, this discrimination did occur, we're not going to go away. We're going to try to tie you in for at least 3 to 5 years of training every year until we're sure that everyone on your staff understands what the law is.
And rightly so. Well, we're about to wind down, Ms. Taylor, and we want to thank you. One of the reasons why I just love this lady is because she knows how to take a very, very intricate topic and simplify it for all of us to understand. Not to insult our intelligence, but to educate us and to give us a level of confidence so that we know what to do, where to go, and who to talk to. And so if you have any problems and you know you have a local Human Rights Commission, come to us or wherever you live, go to them first. And kind of field it, you know, get a feeling of what's going on. Let them help you with the referral, know who to go to, and those types of things. We appreciate you, and we thank the city for allowing us all that they allow us so that we can operate. And for more information, go to our website, and we share it with the City of Paducah. There's probably more information on there than you may ever need to know, but it's right there at your fingertips. And so tune in for our other segments of PHRC Raising the Standard.